はい、それでは次にですね、スペイン
Now
の
I'd
から
like to
はるばる参加
introduce
いただ
the
いています、
next
ミスター・ハン
keynote
ス・ホルスト・コン
speaker
コレフス
from
キ
Spain,
ーに、
Mr. Hans
ビ
Horst
ジョンゼロ、世
Konklevsky.
界の最前線は
He's
今
going
とい
to
うこ
talk
とで基調
about
講演をいた
Vision
だきたいと
Zero
思い
and
ま
the
す。
Great Reset.
特にコンコレフスキーさんが先週主催された国際カン
Mr.
ファレンスのテーマでありま
Konklevsky
す、ビジョン
held
ゼ
the
ロと
international
ザ・グレート・リ
conference
セット
Vision
というこ
Zero
と
and
を
the
中
Great
心にお話しいた
Reset.
だきます。
And his
はい。
presentation will be focused around this concept.
コンコレフスキーさんはですね、EU の、労団
Mr.
で責官である EU
Konkolevsky
オーシャの事務局長とか、あるいは
had long
先ほどもありました
served
国際社会
as
保障機関
director of EU
ISSA のトップマ
OSHA
ネジ
and
メントを
also
務めておられまし
ISSA
て、
top management.
まさに欧州をはじめ世界の労
He's
団全盛
indeed the
の中
core
核オ
or
ピニ
the
オンリーダーで
leader
おられま
of
す。
occupational safety
ISSA
and
において、ビ
health
ジョンゼロキャンペー
in
ンを
Europe
創
and
設されまし
also
た。
in the
また現在は
world.
ビジョンゼロキャンペーンのアンバサダー、
He
といいますか、
founded
伝道師と
Vision
して、
Zero campaign, and
世
as
界
an
中でビジョ
ambassador,
ンゼロを中
he's
心とした
now been
プロモー
promoting
ション活動を展開されておられ
OSH
ます。
around the world,
欧州はもとより北米、中南米、ロ
not
シア、中央ア
only
ジア
in
等々
Europe but
でござ
also
いま
in
す。
North America,
アフリカ
South
も含めてで
America,
ございます。
Central
日本に
Asia,
も
and Africa, and Southeast
2018
Asia.
年
He's
の
been
11
promoting this
月に
idea.
日本に
In
来られまし
2018,
て、
in
ビ
November,
ジョ
he
ンゼロ
came
キャ
to
ン
Japan
のですね、日本でのローン
and
チを
launched
エグザッ
Vision
プして行
Zero
ったところで
Japan
ございます。現在も
as
ORP イ
I
ンターナショ
except.
ナルのプレジデントとして、
Now, as a president of
ビジョン
ORP
ゼロをはじめとする
International,
労働衛生関係に関するプロモー
he's
ション活動
been
を展
very
開されております。
active in
先ほど申しましたそ
promoting
の
the
セミナーもそう、
concept of
ワークショップも、
OSH.
カンファレ
And
ン
the
スもそうでござ
workshop
い
I
ますし、
talked about, or
世
the
界中にネッ
conference
トワーク
I
影響
talked
力を
about
有して
was
おら
one
れ
of
ます。
them.
特に
He has
グ
extensive
ローバル企
network
業の
around
参
the
画を得
world
て組
and
織され
is a
まし
very
た
influential
ビジョンゼロビジ
person.
ネスカウンセルの会長でもおられます。
Especially,
そ
he's
れでは
also
コンコレ
chairperson
フ
of
スキー
Vision
さん、ど
Zero
うぞ
Business
よろしく
Council.
お願いいた
Now,
します。
Mr. Konkolevsky, the floor is yours.
I'm very pleased to present to you the discussion that took place only a couple of days ago online. And the background for this discussion is clearly the situation we all find ourselves in. We are now 1 year into the pandemic, which has dramatically disrupted our lives and caused a lot of pain to our societies and has changed the world of work dramatically. But it has also given us an opportunity to rethink our social and economic models and to consider which future we would like also for the world of work. The next slide, please. So I would like to start with a brief video, which is summarizing the context of the conference. So if you would kindly start the video. You have to take the cursor to the bottom of the page and then start the video. The next slide, please. So even before the pandemic hit the world, so to say, and within very few weeks, almost all countries of the world were affected by this virus. There were already a number of global challenges for prevention. Next slide, please. Next, please. Every year, 2.8 million people die because of their work, and 4% of global gross domestic product is lost due to poor working conditions. The important thing is that only 15% of people die because of work accidents. The vast majority, more than 85%, die because of health problems, because of illnesses related to work. Next slide, please. So we have a changing world of work with a number of trends. We have an aging workforce, and we have more female labor market participation. We have globalization with the migration flows, where people travel to other countries for their life and work often under vulnerable conditions. We have a change in the nature of risks at work, where mental health issues, stress-related issues are more and more predominant. And finally, we have digitalization, as it already was described by Professor Mukaedono, where we have now people, men, working side by side with robots. Next slide, please. Time of prevention emerging on the background of that. And this is what I'm going to talk about, and this is what the conference was about. That we now are going towards organizational health and sustainability. So we are no longer just talking about industrial safety, but we now talk about health and sustainability. The next slide, please. And the reasons for that are multiple. First of all, we have a new commitment by companies to the safety, health, and well-being of their people. This is what Vision Zero is embracing. Secondly, we have a better understanding of that good safety and health also is good business, and that for each dollar or yen invested, we get $2.2 back. We also have the challenges due to the emerging digital economy and concepts like Safety 2.0, collaborative safety, to address these. We have an increased attention to the socio-economic and environmental impact of business, the impact on sustainability. And these are covered in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. We have also increased market demands for high performance in safety and sustainability. There's demand for certification of ISO certificates, for example, certification for quality, safety and health and environment. And we have the ESG, environment and social governance guidelines, which are more and more influential now for investors. And finally, we have an increased attention in the society, in businesses, about the importance of prevention and well-being because of the COVID pandemic, which has caused a lot of also physical and mental strain. Next slide, please. Please click. So the World Economic Forum took in June last year the initiative which is called the Great Reset. And the idea of the Great Reset is to rethink our current models and to prepare for a future that is a better future for both planet and people. Please click. And this translates in our language and prevention language to health and sustainability. Please click. And click once more. So you can see that the idea of the World Economic Forum for People and Planet translates into prevention, to prevent health and sustainability. So prevention plays a critical role in that new model for our globe. The next slide, please. In order, however, to unlock this potential of prevention, we need also to review and to redesign prevention in 4 areas. We need to change the mindset about prevention at business level and societal level. We need to create new positive incentives for prevention. We need to use digitalization in the service of prevention, and we need to have better measures to measure the quality and development of our prevention culture. Next slide, please. So if we look at the first challenge, how to successfully change mindsets from the traditional risk management, so the accident focus, to a healthy and sustainable prevention culture. So we need to continue, of course, our attention towards risk management, but this is no longer enough because of the new world of work, because of the changing risk profiles, because of the changing health impact. We need to enlarge our concept. And this is what I'm going to illustrate with some examples from the conference. Next slide, please. So the Vision Zero strategy is such a new mindset. And this is the one that is really quite dominant now. Because what is this mindset? It says, well, we believe that all accidents, diseases, and harm at work are preventable. We see Vision Zero not as a target, a zero target, but as a process, a continuous improvement process. The aim is to develop a culture of prevention that integrates both safety, health, and well-being at work. And in order to get there, there is a roadmap with 7 golden rules, which already have been mentioned by Professor Mukaidono. The next, please. So this concept, looking both at safety, health, and well-being, has also been developed in the United States by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH. And for many years now, NIOSH is promoting a concept called total worker health. So to keep workers safe, to grow health, and to create worker well-being. And they demonstrate that by focusing on this, we improve retention, morale, and productivity, and reduce absenteeism. And on the right-hand side, you can see, and it gives a positive return on investment between $2 and $4.50 per each dollar invested. So we have a very parallel development also in the discussion of in the United States of America. The next slide, please. So if we look at an example for this, how this is implemented, we have an example of a company, Babcock and Wilcox, which is a company that produces and maintains waste to energy plants. So they're in the green industry, turning waste into energy. And they have a program which is called Target Zero, each and every day. And if you look into what their Target Zero culture includes, we talk about the same issue. Zero is achievable. Incidents are preventable. Safety is personal. A willingness to intervene all day, every day. And in order to implement this, they start with the management. So they start with a management training and then a training for all. And that's also the principles in Vision Zero, that management has to take a lead. They have to commit. Top management has to show the way. And then you have to involve all people, all staff in that development so that everybody forms part and takes responsibility for occupational safety and health. And as you can see from these slides, they're also looking at actions both on safety, health, and well-being. And for them, the status on psychological working environment and well-being is one of the leading indicators. Next slide, please. Another example is a company you already heard from, which is L'Oréal. And you can see the picture again. So L'Oréal has extended their responsibility not only to the people working in the company, but also to their families and communities. They have a holistic view on safety, health, and well-being, and they want to engage directly also in promoting safety, health, and well-being, not only with the worker, with the employee, but also with the family and the community. And this shows that the responsibility of companies nowadays goes beyond the gates of the company. They go also to the private life and to the community. The next slide, please. So these were a couple of examples showing how a company's mindset focuses on safety, health, and well-being as a strategic tool for a company's development. And secondly, that they enlarge the concept of safety, health, and well-being to also include the families and societies, to take a real social responsibility. The second challenge we have is related to positive incentives to promote a healthy and sustainable business culture. So far, the incentives that we mainly have used at societal level have been incentives related to compliance. Compliance of a company with existing safety and health rules and regulations. So these were external obligations for a company to protect its workers. And now I would like to show you a couple of examples on how you can introduce positive incentives to companies to invest in their people. The next slide. This is an example from Germany, from the German Social Accident Insurance. And they have introduced incentives, both intangible incentives where they run competitions, they give awards, they give certificates to companies that have a high level of prevention. And they have also financial incentives because they graduate the payment to the insurance based on the company's safety and health performance or on the company's safety and health investment plans. So in this way, they give an incentive to the company to focus more on safety, health, and well-being. The next slide, please. Another important incentive for companies nowadays is the demands from investors. And the United Nations have established the principles for responsible investment. And as you can see from this slide, very important investors like BlackRock or JP Morgan, they have signed up to these principles. And these principles promote ESG. No? They promote this philosophy of running business based on environment, social, and governance. And the social dimension includes, of course, also safety, health, and well-being. So therefore, a company's performance in this field is very important to attract investments for the future development. Next slide, please. We have here an example from a company in Japan, which is also part of a member of the Global Vision Zero Business Council. And you can see how they have taken the UN's Sustainable Development Goals into their organization, into the ESG structure of this company. So this is a very practical example how ESG and the sustainability has become an important part of doing business, and that you measure and that you give these incentives to companies. Next slide, please. The last example I want to show you is from Tesco. And here you can see that for this company, the incentive is not only to take care of its people, no? For example, the safety, health, and well-being, but also they focus on products. So they want to avoid food waste, and they look into animal welfare. They take care of the planet, so climate change, and they look into other measures, and they take care of their community. So this means the code of business conduct of this company, the incentive that they give is much wider than just following the legislation of a country. They go much beyond this legal obligation for compliance. Next slide. The third topic is about how to optimize digitalization for safety, health, and well-being at work. Next slide. So first of all, what we can see is a dramatic change in the work organization, in how work is conducted. And this table from the European Foundation for Living and Working Conditions, Eurofound, you can see the development from 2013-14 to 2020 as regards remote work, ICT-based work. And you can see with these orange columns that we see huge increases in this online work, on digital work. This has, of course, been accelerated even further with the COVID pandemic, because many people have been asked to work from home, to do teleworking. And so we believe that even after the pandemic, that we'll see a major change, and that this trend to work digital, to work remote, will be maintained also in the future. And therefore, we have to look into prevention measures. And the next slide, please. And therefore, we need to also develop a new way of working that makes it possible to have a flexible organization of working time, a flexible work content, and a flexible work environment, so that everybody can work safely, but also in contact with its colleagues in a modern and correct work environment in the future. Because what has happened with the pandemic is that you just send people home to work from their apartments and work together with their families. And there was not sufficient protection also here as regards ergonomic conditions, as regards working environment conditions. There can be noise because the children are at home and many other conditions. And there's a lack of social contact there. So this has been very, very strainful for people also to work. But in the future, we need to develop these new ways of working to ensure that this work is carried out remotely, but safely, and also in an environment of well-being. The next slide, please. During the conference, we saw a number of very, very interesting and inspiring examples of how the new technology, digitalization, can be used to improve our work environment, our safety and health at work. And here is an example from a company called Tony in Germany, who is developing systems to recognize, interpret human effects, so sentiments, emotions, in order to make sure that there is a early intervention, that you try to prevent that, let's say, these type of stress feelings, that they develop into something serious. And this can help, for example, where people working with a screen online, that it early is recognized by these sensors, by analyzing these visual data and other data, that you can avoid, for example, fatigue, stress, or when you work with cobots, as the example is shown there as well, that you can make sure that the speed of the cobot is adjusted to the human and not the other way around. So there are some very, very interesting aspects in analyzing these data. The next slide, please. The next example is from Hong Kong, from the Occupational Safety and Health Council of Hong Kong, and it shows a whole range of different IoT based technologies. For example, the safe driving systems with a number of sensors that observe a person's distraction or other issues. We can see smart wearables, for example, smart helmets with sensors to register risks. We see an example of an intelligent sterilization robot, which of course now is used to sterilize environments to avoid infections. And very interesting also drones with IoT sensors that can help, for example, to take care and rescue people that work in remote areas, for example, on an offshore installation. The next slide, please. We have also, of course, the example of Shimizu, because Mr. Kawata presented the very, very impressive work that is done at his company to introduce a smart site where a lot of the heavy work and the dangerous work is replaced by robots, but also very interesting how heavy equipment contact is avoided through sensors and through a very sophisticated system of surveillance, which makes sure that the individual worker does not suffer any harm. The next slide, please. But it was also stressed that the digitalization process offers opportunities and challenges. And in order to address the challenges, for example, ergonomic and safety risks, work-related stress and others, that we also need to manage these proactively. And for example, by using the 7 golden rules of Vision Zero in an adapted format. Next slide, please. The last area is the question of how to improve the measurement of the work environment, of the prevention culture of a company. Next slide. So traditionally, we have used what we call lagging indicators, where we look into historic accident figures, illness figures, work absenteeism. And the problem is that the past performance is not a good predictor for future performance. So we have only looked through a very small hole in the fence. And there is a need to have much wider data. And for this reason, the ESA, as part of its Vision Zero campaign, has developed proactive leading indicators where you do not ask for the historic data, but we ask actually for the current data in a company. For example, as regards leadership commitment or as regards pre-work briefings and others. So it's a sophisticated system of indicators that helps the company to see how they perform as regards these important areas of the 7 golden rules. And the next slide, please, with an example of a company that is using these. This is a company, a Danish company, KK Wind Solutions, who has been introduced the leading indicators on the basis of a global analysis of tools that are available because their top management wanted to improve safety, health, and well-being. And so they looked for it and they found that Vision Zero is a relevant strategy because it's proactive, it's looking ahead, and also because it involves well-being. And well-being is and as it was mentioned by Professor Mukaidono, it has become even more important. The next slide, please. You also need to measure the economic impact of prevention. Often we only focus on the costs of training, the cost of buying equipment and others, but we should look into that investment in safety, health and well-being actually is a productive investment with a high return rate. So we have a return calculated at different international studies showing about $2.2 for each dollar invested. And we have to remember also that at the national level, that poor working conditions have a huge cost on the national economy, as it's illustrated on the right-hand side, where you, for example, can see that a country like Germany, 2.7% of GDP is actually lost every year because of poor working conditions. The next slide, please. And finally, an example from Philip Morris International, where they, in their indicators, in their metrics, they also look into sustainability issues. And that they say it's important that we have a sustainable, holistic view of sustainability, business and organization, and move from environment, health and safety to environment, health and safety, so that we have an integrated approach. And they measure this through different of their programs, amongst others, Top Employers program with a lot of indicators about how actually also the employees, the workers, perceive the company and rate the company. So this is also an important part of it, that you get data about how working in your company is perceived by the employees, so that you also find this kind of, you could say, soft indicators for the quality of the prevention culture in your company. The next slide, please. So in conclusion, we can say that there was a very positive message from the OSH community as regards the reset. We believe that we can actively contribute to a positive result of this reset by taking care, especially of the human dimension of this reset. But we need also to change ourselves. We need to enlarge our prevention concepts. We need to strengthen and introduce new mindsets, not only the traditional risk prevention, risk management, industrial risk mindset, but a modern mindset that includes both safety, health, and well-being. We need to have better incentives for companies, make it visible and attractive for companies to invest and focus on prevention. We have to use the digitalization process in the service of prevention. We've seen a lot of examples on how digitalization can contribute to this. We have seen how the collaborative safety approach that has been developed in Japan is promoting the positive outcomes of digitalization, but we also have to assess it and try to minimize the risks that are clearly also related with digitalization. And finally, we have to use both leading and lagging indicators, as well as multiple data, to get a much more complete picture of a prevention culture. This can not only be measured through historic accident data. So with the last slide, please. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention. I'm sorry about the technical problem that occurred. But it shows even also that digitalization has its limitations. And I hope nevertheless that you found my presentation interesting. Thank you very much.
はい、コンコレフスキーさんどうもありがとうございました。ビジョンゼロ
Thank you
観
very
測
much
世
for
界
your
の動き、光を企業
presentation.
の動き、大変
He
多くの
talked
事例
about
を
the world
です
trend
ね、メリ
about
ット、メリッ
Vision
ト示してい
Zero,
ただきました。大変分か
introducing
り
a
や
lot
す
of
かったかと
examples
思いま
from
す。
around the world.
プリベンションカルチャーのマインドセットの変化とか、ある
Prevention
いはデジタライ
culture,
ゼーショ
new
ンの中での
mindset,
対応だとか、
digitalization,
あるいは評価
how to
メカニズ
respond
ム、
to
メトリ
it,
ックス、あるいは
and
インセンティブ、人材
metrics,
付け
and
話等
also
々、
incentives.
幅広くお話
All
しいただいて、
those
大変
topics
我
are
々も知り
covered
が深
by
まっ
the
たんではないかなと
presentation,
いう
and
ふうに
we
考えま
now
す。
have a much
はい。
deeper understanding
それ
about
で、
Vision Zero.
すみません、テクニカルプロブレムもございまして、時
And
間が
I
押してしまっ
apologize
て
for
ございます。
technical
当初、
problem, and
本
we are
館も少
behind
々
the
の休憩取り
schedule.
たいと思っており
We
ま
are
したが、
supposed to
そ
have
のま
5
ま
minutes break,
パネ
but
ル
we
ディ
would
スカ
like
ッ
to
ショ
go
ンにです
into
ね、
the
入
panel
らせていただき
discussion.
たいと考えております。ということで、パネリストの方々、恐縮でございますが、ご用意くだ
So
さい。特にコンコレフスキー
may
さんには、
we
講演
ask
に
a
引き続きというこ
panelist
とで申し
to
訳
be
ございません
ready?
が、よろし
Mr.
くお願いいたし
Konkolevsky
ま
is
す。
going to join the panel as well.